Turning Red is the latest Pixar film and is directed by Dame Shi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I really hope I didn't mispronounce her name. But yeah, this is a new Pixar movie. I've been looking forward to it for quite a while. I don't remember when the first trailer dropped, but I remember seeing that trailer in theaters and was very excited for it. I was, oh, this seems like it has a lot of promise. It seems like a much better premise and a much better setup than Luca was. So, Pixar have been kind of a little inconsistent with their quality as of late. Ever since Cars 2, no, 3, not Cars 2, Cars 3 came out, I've noticed they've been kind of on this back and forth path of like, that was okay, and then, oh, that movie was really great, and then, oh, that movie was really not so fantastic. Like, Coco was phenomenal, Cars 3 was pretty decent. I completely forget what. Oh, and then Incredibles 2, I was disappointing, but still pretty good. And then in 2020, you had Onward, which was really kind of just there. It was just another Pixar movie. And then you had, where is it? You had Soul, which is one of my favorite Pixar movies of all time. I absolutely adore this movie. And then last year you had Luca, which I really did not like at all. It's one of my least favorite Pixar movies, in fact. So Pixar really has been an inconsistent animation studio as of late, and that was my main worry going into Turning Red. It's going to be my main worry going into any Pixar movie. But yeah, I was excited, but still very kind of jaded from, especially from how not so great Luca was. I'm really happy to say that Turning Red is not nearly as disappointing as Luca is. This movie is not disappointing at all, actually. I really did enjoy Turning Red. I've heard a lot of really mixed feedback from this movie. If you look at the critic score on Tomatoes, it's like a normal Pixar really high rating, but the audience score I think is sitting around 70 or 69%, and which is kind of like odd. It's a pretty big difference between the critic score, and I use it kind of just like as a baseline opinion that people have. But a lot of other people that review the movie really didn't like it, and I don't know, that's kind of odd. I have my issues with the movie. This thing isn't perfect. It's not Pixar's best by any means. It's not anywhere near something like Soul or Coco, but I still really enjoyed Turning Red, and I think it has its own place within the Pixar ethos, I guess. And I think it finally gets the smaller scale story correct. Pixar was doing these movies that were a lot smaller scale, were a lot less like grand statements. They were a lot less emotionally impactful. Which this movie, I'm not saying this movie isn't emotionally impactful, doesn't make grand statements or anything like that. I'm just saying it's stories on a much smaller scale than something like Soul or Incredibles 2, and it does that right. Some Onward and Luca both tried to do that, and if they failed at it, they just kind of felt like meandering movies that really didn't have a direction and kind of were boring a little bit. But Turning Red is not boring even a little bit. I think it has a really quick pace to it that really works. It's throwing a lot at you at once. There is so much humor and so much just like energy that this movie has. It's being thrown at you constantly, and that can be a little bit of a nuisance at times. But I think this movie does do that smaller scale, smaller stakes kind of story really, really well. It's the first Pixar movie in a while to have the same feeling as the classic era Pixar movies. I don't know how to describe this, but certain Pixar movies just have that comfortability to them, that they just have this element that makes them instantly rewatchable, that makes them feel cozy almost, and Pixar has been missing that for a while. With the big exception, I don't want to keep going back to Soul, but I really do love that movie. That's a big exception, but everything else really, even the good movies, haven't had this sense of like feeling like home, like a lot of other Pixar movies do, at least for me. And this movie has that instantaneously. Mostly having to do with the family dynamics and the way the direction of the story goes, just stuff like that. I don't know. It feels very cozy, very welcoming, very lived in, and I think that was a really good part of the movie. It has the same tone and essence as stuff like WALL-E and Ratatouille. Those are the two biggest movies that I was getting like influences from, that I was getting the same feelings as. The themes that are touched upon, stuff like mother-child relationships, puberty, friendship, all hit with an emotional gut punch. This is a very emotional movie, especially towards the end. It's gonna hit you in the feels if you're really paying attention to it. I don't know. Like if you're letting the movie kind of take you in and you are following along with the characters, you are clicking with this movie, it's gonna hit you pretty hard towards the end. Maybe not as bad or as much as something like Up, but this movie does have a lot of emotion, and I think it hits that emotional tone in just the right way, where it's not tugging, it's not like ripping at your heartstrings. It's just sad all the time, sad, sad, sad. But it is pulling at them in just the right way, where it is impacting you. It is kind of moving. This movie is a moving film by the end. And there are moments in this movie that absolutely, like I was saying, absolutely wreck you emotionally, and is really strong thematically. And I think that's easily its biggest strength. Outside of some of the technical aspects, is its script from a thematical standpoint, from a story standpoint. It is a very strong movie when it comes to its themes, it comes to its narratives, it comes to the character relationships especially. I really did love all the voice acting in this movie, and I feel like the characters in this movie felt like a real family, and they felt, I don't know, their relationships and their dynamics and like the friends' relationships all felt genuine. They all felt really, I don't know, a lot of care was put into them by the filmmakers behind this movie, and I think that is something we don't get a lot of in a lot of animation movies, especially recently, and that was really refreshing to kind of see. And this movie is definitely more for older children, I would say. It's not so much aimed at like all ages, and it's more so for people who have gone through puberty or are currently going through puberty. So a lot of littler kids may not like this movie, but I'm not a little kid, so obviously I don't really care about that. So I think this movie tells that story really well about a child going through puberty, like someone around like 13. There are aspects of it that I'm not the biggest fan of, that I will get into with my negatives, but I felt that the stuff that this movie did do right with that, the stuff that where it really hit, it did really well. Had to restart there, just was getting a little flustered, but I especially love the relationship between the main character and her mother, and all the family heritage stuff, like family expectations, and the way the mother is kind of pigeonholing her daughter, and like trying to make her this perfect person, even, and then she's trying to grow out of it. It's all stuff that I can very much relate to. Maybe not exactly relate to, but it is stuff that I feel like everyone can relate to, at least at some point in their lives. And it's I don't know, it's very it's done right. It's done with a lot of care, a lot of passion was put into this movie, very obviously from the filmmakers, from a story standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, and that is its biggest strength. Is this movie's themes and emotions are very, very strong, and its character relationships and the way they interact with each other is just a joy to watch. This movie is very much a joy to watch for the most part. Also, the camera work and the animation is really exceptional here. Obviously, the animation is great. It's Pixar. It's like saying that a Tim Burton movie will have Johnny Depp in it at this point. It's a thing that happens. But the camera work is really, really good. It's very different and kind of unique for Pixar. They don't really normally do this with their camera work. It's usually very standard for animation, but it was shot in a way that feels like a live action movie, and I thought that was really creative. I think that is something that Dami Shi, I think that's how you say it. Again, I'm sorry if I said that wrong, but is something she really, really did well, and I think is a really unique aspect of this movie that not a lot of other people are putting out. So yeah, this is a really good movie from a directorial standpoint. This is a really solid Pixar movie. It fits very well within their filmography. It fits well within their style. But it also branches out and does things a lot differently than a lot of other Pixar movies, and I'm honestly all for it. I want more Pixar movies like this one, kind of pushing the boundary and trying something different, and it mostly sticks to the landing. Um, it's not going to be one of my favorite movies of the year, definitely not, and that's because of these negatives that I'm about to get into. But I do want to stress that I really did enjoy Turning Red, and I think I want more animated movies to be like this movie. So yeah, I just want to say that before I get into my negatives, which there is a decent amount. There's a decent amount of negatives with this movie where it's disappointing to kind of pick apart a movie I really did latch onto, especially emotionally. I had a very strong emotional connection with this movie, and I wish it wasn't as flawed as it is, because if it wasn't, it would be something I would really recommend and really just love the shit out of. But yeah, this movie has its fair share of shortcomings. It falls really short when it comes to the humor. It's not inserted well. It's not well written at all. There are moments that were supposed to be really emotional and really like impactful that are just ruined by a stupid joke. And I get that the humor's not for me. I get that the humor is more geared towards younger kids, especially like around the 12, 13. And a lot of it kind of works sometimes and is like quirky and heartwarming, but most of the time it's kind of an obnoxious distraction from what's actually going on. I wish there was less of it, and some of it's just weird editing or weird timing or kind of like a weird reference or something. It's just, why did they choose to do that right now? It's very much in the vein of stuff like Lorna Miller. It's borrowing pretty heavily from Lorna Miller, where I wouldn't be surprised if they had some involvement with this movie. They probably didn't, but they definitely, their fingerprints are felt a little bit throughout this movie. Where like, okay, they definitely watched the Lego Movie and or Mitchell's versus the Machines, and it could be painfully and kind of awkwardly unfunny at times. There are just some moments in this movie that really just make me go, oh, why did that have to be in here? It has a decent amount of filler also that could have been trimmed. I did like the pacing for the most part, but there were moments where I was just like, okay, come on. And then I realized this is only an hour and 45-minute movie. Why am I saying, all right, come on already? You know, and there are a decent amount of speed bumps throughout the way. There's just moments that really ruin the pacing, or moments that you just wish weren't in the movie. And like from a story standpoint, you can't have that in an hour and 45-minute movie. You just cannot have filler like that. And excuse me, for the most part, and I'm not saying the entire movie, I'm saying for the most part, the humor is what brings this movie down. The bad timing, the bad execution of the jokes, the frequency of the jokes just did not work for me. And I think that is what really bogs this movie down and creates moments that you really wish weren't in the movie. Because the stuff that is great is phenomenal, but the stuff that isn't really doesn't work. And it kind of leaves me feeling a little, not mixed. I'm not mixed on this movie. I would recommend it. I really, really do like Turning Red. But it makes me just like a movie that I really want to love, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's kind of my unfiltered thoughts on Turning Red. I'm going to give it a really strong B. I did like it a lot. I think it's a very, very solid animated movie. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you for bearing with me through that. I know that wasn't my best review, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. And I'll have another review of the Adam Project out really soon once I finish it. Probably a 1-minute review. But yeah, look forward to that. And actually sometime this week should be my top 10 favorite movies of 2021. So yeah, look forward to that. I'll see you guys later.